Okay, so now we're going to talk about slopes of lines. To start with, let's review a little bit again. Remember, the slope is a rise over the run. It's a vertical change over the horizontal change. And we're even going to get into a little bit of algebra here. So we're just going to touch on it and get into it more later. So again, when you have your line, find 2 points that you know are definite points, and you go up or down first, because it's a rise on top, and then go over across to get the bottom number. In this case, they're both positive because I went up and to the right. Another way to find the slope without a graph is to write down the 2 points, for example, 1, 3, and 4, 7, and you can label them as x, y, but because you have 2 of them, you want to go x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, and y sub 2. Now that's not the same thing. It does not, x sub 2 does not equal x squared. See the difference? One's on the bottom, and one means x times x. So it's not what we're talking about here. Okay, they're not equal to each other. So x sub 2 is just like the second point, and it's the x value of the second point. Okay, so if the slope is a rise over the run, remember the rise is how the y values change. So in other words, you just change means to subtract. So they're changing, so you just take, if I start with a y2, I got to go 7 minus 3, and that's 4. And then to get the run, I start with the x, I start with the 4 there because I started with the 7 there, so I start with the 4, so I go 4 minus 1, and that's 3. So you must always start from the same point. Okay, we're not going to look at a lot of that for the rest of the video, but I want to just give you a little bit of that to write down your notes and to have it with you. So that's why the actual formula is y2, because you start with the second y, and then you subtract it from the first y from it. And then since you start with that second point, you have to start with the second point when you do the x's. It's the same thing. Okay, it really doesn't matter. I could have put this, I could have done 3 minus 7 and 1 minus 4. And if you do that, you'll see you'll still get 4/3. You get negative 4 for negative 3, which really, a negative divided by negative is again positive, so you still would get the 4/3. Okay, now let's talk about things we've been talking about. There's 4 different types of slopes. One is positive. Remember, as you read from left to right, we here in America read from left to right. So the positive slope is going to be going up as you read from left to right. I just tried to illustrate a couple of different types of positive slope lines. Negative, same thing. As you read from left to right, it goes down though. You still read from left to right. That's the only thing that's the same. And if it goes down as you're reading it from left to right, that would be a negative slope. And you always want to check yourself. If you've got the slope and it's not negative, but it's going down, then you calculated something wrong. You got to go back and check and see where you messed up. Okay. The other 2 kinds we talked about already, but you have zero slope, which means it's going to be a horizontal line because it doesn't go up or down. So the rise would be 0. We talked about how this equation would actually be y equals 2 because it's on the y equals 2. And actually every point on here, see that would be the point 0, 2. This would maybe be the point 2, 2. This would be the point negative 1, 2. But you know the y value each time is 2. So y equals 2. Same thing here is y equals 0, and y equals 0 is actually the x-axis. Notice how it follows right along the x-axis, okay? This would be y equals negative 5, because right there's your negative 5, and every point along here, y is equal to negative 5. X is equal to all kind of numbers, but y would always be negative 5. So similarly, for the vertical line, it's going to be x equals something, because all along the vertical line, those are x points always equal something. This is the point 4, 0. This would say be the point 4, 3. This might be the point 4, negative 5 or something. Notice the x is always 4. X equals 4. Remember, the vertical lines have no slope, and that's different from 0. 0 does not equal no. 0 is a number. No is, there's no number. Okay? That might be helpful to see it. A lot of times in English language, 0 and no are kind of like the same. I have no cookies, I have 0 cookies. It means the same, but for slope, it's a little bit different. Okay. Now, we're going to learn to write an equation from a line given the graph, and then we're going to learn to draw the graph given the equation. Okay, so we're going to practice that a little bit. Okay, to write an equation of a line given the graph, you find the slope of the line, then you find where it hits the y-axis, and then you simply can very easily write the equation because we know the equation is going to be equal to y by itself. It's going to equal something times x. Remember, the thing in front of that x is the unit rate, which is the same thing as the slope. And then it's going to be, you're going to add to that whatever the y-intercept was. When that y-intercept is 0, then that's when you have the proportional graph where it just is going to be going through 0, 0. Okay. So for this particular line, I found out I went down 6 and over 5, so my slope is negative 6 over 5. I figured the y-intercept is positive 6. Even though I went down 6, remember this is going to be positive 6. This is 6. Okay, so the y-intercept is 0, 6. So here I put my slope, it's negative 6 over 5, and my y-intercept is 6. So this right here is the equation of that line. Okay, next one. I wrote my line, so I saw that to go from this point to that point, I had to go down 1, which is going to be negative 1, over, and then I had to go over 3, negative 3. Okay, so I made a mistake here. So here I got negative 1 over negative 3. Remember, negative divided by negative is positive. So my slope is going to be positive, which I should have known because here when I checked, my line's going down, so the slope is negative. Here, my line is going up just a little bit, but at least it's going up, and it's going to be 1/3, so positive 1/3. So that's good. You can always check yourself. And then your y-intercept here is at point 1, so I'm going to be plus 1 here. Okay. Now, to graph a line given the equation, okay? Now here we have just the equation, no picture, no graph, nothing. We got to figure out what it's going to look like. So remember, y must be by itself on one side of the equation. So if nothing else, you can, first of all, you have to make sure that y is by itself, okay? The number in front of the x, the coefficient, remember that's called the coefficient, is the slope, is how it's tilted, okay? The number after the x, whether it's plus or minus, plus 5, minus 2, whatever, is the y-intercept. So here, for this particular one, your slope is negative 2 or negative 2 over 1. And your y-intercept, since there's nothing added to it, then the y-intercept is 0, 0. So now you plot. First thing you want to plot is the y-intercept first, because that's all you know. All you know is that point. All you know. So you plot 0, 0. Okay? Then from that point, you got to go up or down according to the slope. So I see now I've got to go down. I got to go down 2. So I go down 2 from that point. I go over 1, and I put a point. Well, now that you have 2 points, you have a line, because a line is the shortest distance between 2 points. So you just simply connect the lines, and then you want to always check to make sure. Okay, it's going down as I'm reading from left to right, so it has to be negative, and yeah, oh yeah, there it was negative. So it's probably true that your line is an accurate picture of the equation. Okay? All right, so you have 2 more examples, I think, and then we're done. So right here, we have number 4. We have the equation. All you're given is that. Okay, so first thing, get your slope. Your slope is the guy. Well, first of all, check, make sure y is by itself. Your slope is the number in front of the x, the coefficient. In this case, it's 3, or if you want to think of 3 over 1, because rise over run. And then your y-intercept is simply going to be 0, negative 2. It's going to be whatever that is, and then, of course, 0 first, because that's your x, and then your y. So the intercept is going to be 0, negative 2. So you plot, start with that point. Start with plotting y equals negative 2. Y is negative 2 down there. Plot that point, and from there, go up or down, and then over. So I've got to go up 3, so 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And I put my point there. Now I have 2 points. I can draw my line and check it because, okay, it's going up, so my slope has to be positive. Oh, it is. Okay, so there you go. Okay, let's do this one now. Y equals negative 3/5 x plus 1. Okay, y is by itself. Check. My slope, remember slope is always the m. That's the letter they picked to use slope. Here my slope is negative 3 over 5. And my y-intercept is going to be 0 and then 1. All right, so first of all, I find that point. 0, 1 is right here on the y-axis. Make sure not to get confused. Don't put it on the x-axis. The y-intercept has to be on the y-axis. Remember, that's your y and that's your x. All right, so now I got that. So I got to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I put my point there. When you have graph paper, it'll be easier than on this board here. Then connect your lines, your dots, I mean. That's your line. That's a little sketchy there, but anyway, that's your line. And then you want to double check. It's going down, and my slope is negative. Very good. Just a little side note. You could have said 3, negative 5. So when you start with that 0, you could have gone up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then over to the left 5. So if I did that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, my line's not that accurate, but my line would have, if I have real graph paper, it would have just been like that point on the line, if that makes sense. It's getting kind of messy, but anyway, you kind of see what I'm saying. And we'll do more of this on graph paper in class. Okay, that's it.